Is it just me, or do short weeks often feel like maybe they're longer weeks than regular weeks? I don't know. This one seemed a little bit long, but here we are. We're at the end of your Friday. It is the last word. And while you're cutting coupons and skipping dinners out now, Ottawa's dining on steak. And while you're renewing your mortgage at 7%, bureaucrats hired by Ottawa are cashing in on performance bonuses for work that never actually got performed. And also, while you're worrying about how to afford groceries, Mark Carney just created two new government offices that pay its CEOs more than the Prime Minister himself. Let that one sink into everybody watching here today. Because the people hired by the man running this country are being paid more than the man running this country. Now, it's not that Mark Carney took a pay cut of any kind. He just paid them $700,000 a year. Are you kidding me? Welcome to Carney's Canada, the land of the billion-dollar bureaucracy, a government so bloated it could collapse under its own paperwork. And it's feeding on you. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. It's the end of your week. It is the last word. It is Friday. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join the conversation about this topic. All down below, I want to hear from everybody. Over the past decade, the federal bureaucracy has exploded. We know that. Pierre talked about it throughout the election and even before. Since 2015, Ottawa's full-time workforce has grown by more than 40%. That's tens of thousands of new positions, including new directors, new consultants, new strategic engagement specialists. While at the same time, productivity in our actual economy outside of public service jobs, the one that, builds the actual things, makes the things, and sells the things, well, that flatlined. And according to this government, that's okay because we've got lots of public service jobs. Canada now spends more on public administration than on housing construction, more on bureaucrats than on national defense. And yet, here we are. We're constantly told that there's no money for health care. We can't add to that right now. No money for tax relief and no money for affordability programs that actually work. Most of the reason for that, by the way, is that the Liberal government spent drunkenly on everything else. Because the money is already gone. That's the essential issue here. It's swallowed by a machine that only ever grows somehow, but never shrinks. And yes, Mark Carney is currently talking about cutting back on the public service, but he's saying that that'll be done through attrition. Is that enough? Think about what Carney's built just this year. A major projects office adds to the bureaucracy, and a defense procurement office also does. Each of them with CEOs earning over $577,000 plus bonuses, and that is where the bonuses take them well over 700,000. These are brand new agencies stacked on top of existing agencies that already failed to deliver on any of these initiatives. Ottawa's answer to every broken system seems to be to build another layer of management over top of it. That's not the way successful teams work. We now have ministries, sub-ministries, working groups, advisory panels, councils, and task forces, all talking about fixing things that another government office already exists to fix. It's bureaucratic inception. And government is within government when you do it this way. That doesn't make any sense and is not efficient one little bit. Meanwhile, the actual results, well, housing prices completely still out of reach, even though we are seeing some come down. Infrastructure projects still delayed by years. Defense procurement still a national embarrassment at this point. How are we going to make all of these promises by the end of the year that you made in the spring, Mark? It's almost the end of the year now. It's not public service anymore. It's just complete and utter public theater, and it needs to stop. The Carney method is paper over performance. That's how he works. He loves agreements about agreements, and he loves meetings about meetings. Mark Carney's answer to every crisis seems to be the same. Create a new office, which creates a whole slew of new meetings, hire a new executive, hold a new press conference here and there, and hope nobody notices that nothing is actually actually getting done. We've seen it with housing, with energy, with affordability. Every time there's a failure, instead of fixing the system, he somehow expands the system with some sort of new office that's going to magically take over and make everything more efficient. Why are we adding a layer then? Why? Because it looks like action. That's why. And in politics, looking busy is far more valuable votes wise than being actually effective at your job. And Carney spent years in the world of central banking and finance where complexity equals control. Make it harder for the public to understand, and now you look like the genius. The more layers between the decision and the outcome, the harder it is to assign blame if you're Canadian citizens. That's what Ottawa's bureaucracy has become. It's like a giant fog machine, keeping you just enough away from actually seeing what's going on. Every new department is another cloud to hide accountability. Every new salary is another vote of loyalty to the Liberal government. And every new announcement is another headline designed to make Canadians think that something's being done. And the mainstream media props them up with all of this stuff as well. Nobody asks the true or difficult questions. But nothing gets done, nothing changes, and nobody seems to ever get fired for inaction. It's crazy. If this were the actual corporate world, half of these guys would be long gone. And there's a huge cost to all of us here in Canada. Let's be very, very pragmatic about this. This isn't abstract. You're paying for it, and you're paying a lot for it. Every tax increase, every fee adjustment, every climate surcharge, that's our money funding the Ottawa luxury economy, the one you don't get to see because you don't get to live in it. Public servants are now earning, on average, over 30% more than private sector workers in equivalent type roles. They have guaranteed pensions, guaranteed raises, and remote work flexibility most Canadians would kill for. Yes, they've asked for them to become back to the office, but here's the thing, they still have the opportunity to go out and work from home otherwise. Meanwhile, you're being told to tighten your belt by the people whose belts are made of taxpayer leather. You're told inflation means you have to sacrifice for your family. You have to pick the better groceries, or the worst groceries, I guess, in order to make it cheaper. But does the federal bureaucracy ever sacrifice? No, they don't. Do they ever freeze hiring, trim bonuses, or cancel travel budgets? Of course not. None of them do. Mark Carney just chartered a private jet to go to Egypt. They expand, even during recessions, especially during recessions, in fact, because crises are how bureaucracies justify growth. When you're in pain, they prosper because they're consultants and bureaucrats that can help come in and swoop in and fix the problems. And meanwhile, all they do is hold consistent meetings about meetings and never actually action anything they've given you advice on. Somewhere along the way, Ottawa stopped serving Canadians and started serving itself. We no longer have a government of the people. That is definitely long gone. We have a government of administrators now. That's all we have. They measure success not in results, but in reports. They reward effort, not outcomes, and therefore there aren't any outcomes, ever. And they treat the private sector like an inconvenience, the messy engine that funds their lifestyle, even though Mark Carney will get up in Parliament and try to school Pierre Poilievre on the fact that there is something called the private sector. The private sector doesn't like you, Mark. We now have bureaucrats in glass towers deciding how much fertilizer farmers can use, how many houses developers can build, how much energy Alberta can actually produce, and what kind of car you're allowed to buy. And when those industries push back, Ottawa sends out another round of stakeholder consultations. We better start talking about this and have meetings about this and see where we can take this next. Plus, it'll look like we're taking action. Consultations are just permission slips for delay. The only thing moving fast in this country is the payroll department at the Treasury Board. Everyone else is suffering. And look, the reality is there's a giant level of hypocrisy all among the elites through all of this. See, Mark Carney is an elite, and he looks out for the elites. Mark Carney loves to talk about sustainability. But what's sustainable about a government that costs more every year while doing less? He loves to talk about efficiency, but what's efficient about 300,000 federal employees working from home while passports, visas, and tax filings take months longer than they used to? And yes, I get it. They've called a lot of them back to the office, but it's still going to be water cooler talk and nothing getting done. He loves to talk about fairness. But what's fair about an Ottawa where six-figure bureaucrats lecture minimum wage workers about sacrifice? People standing in front of podiums telling you to cancel your Disney Plus. Wow. I mean, again, I'm not over that one. Carney's government has mastered the art of hypocrisy. They preach restraint while expanding. They talk about affordability while inflating their own payrolls. They demand accountability from the private sector while refusing to show accountability themselves. This is where our government sits right now. And this is the thing. Here's what a real government would do. I mean, that's what we have to discuss here. What would a real government who should actually action and does action things do? Well, a real government would start cutting. It would ask, what can we stop doing here as part of the government bureaucracy instead of who else can we hire to solve it? It would shrink the number of executives, merge overlapping departments, and demand measurable results for the things that the government is implementing. A real leader would tie pay to performance, because if the economy's shrinking, the government themselves should shrink with it. It's our money. It's not their money. And so the government should shrink in that same amount of time. But Mark Carney will never do that because this machine is his power base. It's how he gets and keeps that power. Every bureaucrat, every consultant, every lobbyist is another cog in his entire empire. And every tax dollar you send him keeps that empire spinning. And then there's the human side of the equation. While Ottawa grows, you shrink. How is that even fair? Your savings shrink, your wages shrink, your optimism shrinks. I mean, this is the reality of where Canadians sit right now. And yet you're told the system is working, that this is progress of some sort, that big government seems to be the answer to the inequality in this country, all while the middle class vanishes. But the bigger the government gets, the smaller the citizen becomes. Remember that. And right now, the Canadian citizen is being squeezed into irrelevance. A walking tax form funding a billion-dollar bureaucracy that thinks it knows better than you. And it doesn't. You live this world. You live in Canada. You live on the streets. You live in your homes on the streets, I should say. But the government doesn't understand that. They're never going to understand that you live this life. They just think they know. So here's the truth. Canada doesn't have a cost of living crisis. It has a cost of governing crisis. That's what we should be calling this. Yes, it affects your cost of living, but it's the cost of governing that's creating it all. Every dollar wasted on Ottawa's bloat is a dollar not spent fixing what's broken across the country. Every executive bonus is a teacher underpaid, or a road unrepaired, or a family overtaxed. Mark Carney promised to modernize this government. That's what he said in the election. He's going to do this, and he's going to do this in a different way. But what he's done is basically all the same as Trudeau, except he's also industrialized the government. The bureaucracy isn't a tool anymore. It's the entire system. We went more bureaucratic. And until Canadians wake up and demand that the size of government match the size of its results, we're going to keep living in a country where Ottawa gets richer while you get poorer. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that's already well underway. Because in Carney's Canada, the economy serves the bureaucracy, not the other way around. And that, my friends, that does not make, if that does not make your blood boil, it absolutely should. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things, the last word for your Friday. It's the weekend. Don't forget to check us out tomorrow morning for the weekend wrap on your Saturday morning before we close it out for the weekend and return Monday. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, comment down below on this. Do you feel like the government is bloating while your world is shrinking? That's the real question for today's discussion. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll see you tomorrow morning on the weekend wrap at 7:45 a.m. Until then, have a great Friday night.